All right, I'm going to watch Hythloday's response live. I haven't watched it yet. I just saw that it exists. And checking things, starting to get used to them working. Let's see, I haven't watched it yet. I just saw that it exists. Okay. All right. So just to start off, my point, my basic point, the most fundamental point, so I'll try not to go into a second point, is that in our lifetime we have a film strip of information, a multi-band film strip, a 16 track, with all of our perceptions, right? So it's all kinds of imagery. Sound. What does it mean to say imagery and sound? It's the features of that kind of data. Okay, touch, all of these. We have this finite thing. What is I? Well, it's hard to define, right? But with the film strip, there's a reference. It's the thing, the phenomena that seems to be present in, or is present by definition, in every frame of the film strip, right? And in many, 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 many frames, such that it's ubiquitous, there is experiences of having to make choices. Are those real experiences? Are we really making choices or not? That's sort of the question of willpower. Do we have any influence, right? There's no argument about it being totally free and infinite influence. You know, like we just decide what the next frame will be. No. There's momentum and all kinds of things. How much power, how much energy do you need for there to be willpower? It could be very delicately balanced, right? We don't see willpower in the rocks, in the water, right? But we see it in living creatures that are delicately balanced chemical systems, let's just say. I mean, if you had 1% or a millionth of 1% of the energy in the universe is influenceable, is that a word? By willpower, well, that would be sufficient for it to have an influence, a slow influence over time, kind of like a weak force like gravity has a slow influence over time that becomes apparent. Right? It wouldn't take much energy. You know, if a mosquito's flying along and bumps into a barrier and there's one erg, forgive me if my scale of erg is gone wrong, but you know, it dents that surface with just one little tiny erg. And it's in an environment with millions of different things going on, sources of energy. That would be still significant over time if the influence is that minor. So we obviously have very constrained will at the maximum, but that doesn't mean there is no willpower. And so that's my basic position. You have the film strip. The influence of will would not have to be very strong to be real. Non-zero. Non-zero is enough. Whatever the percentage we could discover. And the reason we can't just discount it is because this phenomena appears in every one of my frames. And I believe your frame, whether you realize it or not, when you're looking at a beautiful vista, you're there, you're doing that. That's your interpretations and your presence, all the questions of will, making choices, just existing or not, any of that is present in every, it's like the sunrise. You want to tell me the sun isn't really rising, fine, but you can't tell me that the phenomena doesn't exist. And not that you are. And that's the point of illusions exist, is people want to say, look, it's an illusion, well, don't worry about it anymore. No, once you prove that the sunrise is an illusion, that means nothing. Until you explain the phenomena some other way, it's still a phenomena, and it has a name. And you could say our interpretation of it is so wrong, it's vastly, grossly it's a gross misunderstanding. But you can't say the phenomena is not there. And when it appears in every single frame, you also have to acknowledge the importance of this phenomena as a primary factor, given that there's not a lot of things that are a factor for sure in every single thing that we see. And the concept of I is such a thing. It's defined and extracted. It's reduced from this. It's like, look, there's this thing, the camera. Okay. All right. Take it away, Hythloday. That was good.
To the machine that goes by the name of Pyro, this machine retorts. This machine...
Okay, this is invocation of a metaphor of machines, which brings to mind for people something that works reliably. But machines don't always work reliably.
has what
Don't make me speed you up.
is commonly spoken about, seems to have goals of acquiring knowledge, information, truths.
Okay, I'm sorry I even said that because it's not an insult to speed you up. I'm really used to sped up video right now. No 2 times again. I wasn't going to do the 2 times, but still, it keeps coming and going. Is it by the video itself?
Of course, it doesn't. This machine really is just organizing structures which it verbalizes.
Okay, right away you say it doesn't really do those things. No, the phenomena exists. I seek information, but I'm not really seeking because I had no choice. Okay, no choice. We're just talking about the choice is an illusion. The phenomena of me seeking information still exists. So you can't just go, but it doesn't really happen. The phenomena happens. The names and interpretations of the phenomena and why or explanation of how and why it's happening, that's what's in question. Not that whether the phenomena exists, I believe. Right? Not that you're going to contradict this. This is just live replying.
As meaning.
Reacting, in other words. Reply is the wrong word. A reply would be where I'd listen to the whole thing. What does that all mean together? This is a reaction.
And understandings and so on and so forth. And one of those structures and the interplay between its subsystems is to communicate with other machines. It's founded a useful notion, the idea of that I have a goal.
My question to this kind of argument is why would it do that? There's so many complicated phenomena that aren't alive. And I don't think you're saying that a storm system has this internal experience because it's complicated, and so it's just right. Why would a chemical, basically a cascade, right? So like a waterfall or a river, it's a cascading system, our body. It's just rolling along, just like a waterfall, but it can stand in place, but internally it's all turning. It's a cyclic phenomena. It's just happening. Why? It's like, well, it needs to motivate you. It doesn't need to motivate you. That's like your argument on how you have to get rid of I and the concept of I if you want to say what you're saying. And I'm saying you can't get rid of the concept I because your primary information has it embedded. There is no, oh, we don't need phlogiston. That was just a fantasy. That's okay because there's no phlogiston in this. But there is choice and the concept of I. And the question with the hard problem is, why would a bunch of chemicals, why would a stone rolling down a hill, oh, look, it's jumping. Why would it have to have, I could see how I might have the illusion, oh, it's running downhill. Maybe that rock is alive. But why would it internally have that? I don't think that it does, and I assume you don't think so either. So there's something missing there about why there would be this internal sensation to even talk about. right? Like if nature just had created robots, why would the robot have this internal picture? It might be reviewing data internally, but in a computer, it's not a bunch of emotions and pictures, it's just numbers, and it's doing math. And if we're just doing math and it comes out as emotions, why, how? It actually almost doesn't even matter how that phenomenon is happening. Something has generated the concepts that we feel is us watching our perceptions. So one way or another, bounding condition, that happens.
Assuming this understood,
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to make this a little bit more of a reply. I'm going to try harder to let you go on because obviously you haven't even tried to make a point. You're just laying down some groundwork and I'm reacting to that. And maybe that's counterproductive. I mean, I don't want to talk so much that this video isn't about whatever you're talking about. So, okay, so go.
I ask the question, do you, Machine Pyro, believe in Mendham's intrinsic value? I ask this question because he knows of this intrinsic value's existence from his own experience. You also are testifying to the knowledge of perhaps this additional force in the universe from experience. It's something that you experience, and therefore you claim its potential existence.
Okay, first of all, no, I don't believe there's an intrinsic value. I think it's more like a life form is a little value machine. And yeah, it's creating the value. It's not what you'd call intrinsic. It's a part of that particular biological system. Um, Two, you're doubting the existence of this phenomena. The phenomena exists. That's not debatable. Which part's an illusion? That's debatable. Like I look at a cloud and I'm watching it for hours as it morphs and goes across the sky, and I see faces in the crowd. I see the motion in the crowd. The face, I think, is an illusion. The phenomena, however, is still going to be there. If all I saw was the faces, the phenomena would still be there. It exists because it's in the film strip. You can't you can't be a frame of film and not exist. At the very least, you're an image. What that image relates to, that's where we're starting to ask what exists. Like, does the image makes me think there must be a God, but do I actually have an image of God? No, I have the image that I've got. So how direct is the image? We have direct images of making choices. That phenomena exists. If we're not really making choices, okay, I totally see the possibility of that. And I'm actually not that worried about it. There's obviously some sort of compatibilism going on where it's not a mistake to try to use your willpower, even if it's an illusion. Maybe we could figure out why that's the case. But it can't not exist.
As you relate this to Machine Hythloday, I find you are offering me no scientific basis of this knowledge. It isn't something I can test. And you are offering me no a priori, pure reasoning logic for its existence. And thus, the extended question is, why should I believe you that there's this extra force in the universe, or whatever?
You just have to believe that there is a phenomenon. And when you come up with your own a priori stuff, which I reject it as a priori, that it's not a priori, but I can still understand that it's actually things you've deduced by reducing the data in your own film strip. It's a possibility. You're saying we've closed the possibility. Look, there's always just one frame after the frame before it. It seems like there could have been anything, but that's the one that happened. So as far as we know, really, the possibility of anything was an illusion, and there was just one frame. Well, physics doesn't argue that anymore because of randomness. There actually is a possibility of more than one frame being added. The next frames are not predetermined according to quantum mechanics. They're probabilistic, which certainly is not, willpower, but it is enough to prove that you haven't shown that there's this entirely single thread computational approach. When you run the universe, that it would come out the same every time. Now, if you put a random number generator in that pipeline, it won't come out the same time. It will not come out at the same time, the same way every time. I mean, now why should you believe anything about this? Is like, well, you you experience these choices, and you ought to imagine more than one way that's possible. One way is that there are choices, and yeah, for that to be true, there has to be a law of physics that allows for that. But we're here, so whatever the explanation for us is, we know that physics is okay with it. That's what created us. And even if we're in a matrix, then physics is just the logic that is between all of the frames. An attempt to find another thing besides the I that exists in all the frames, which is difficult because we have so many hallucinatory images that come through. So we have to deduce that, yeah, but that's this part, and there's a physical, brain that can create these images, but out there's a physical reality. It's secondary to reducing the fact that, well, there's something related that relates all the frames, and that's what I call myself.
You want to call it. You're not. I understand you're not specifically tied to the notion of force per se, maybe, but there is something interacting and existent.
It helps when I do this.
Question? I'm asking, how is this machine supposed to differentiate between your claim and Mendham's claim? This is a point that I've made.
Okay, I don't see how those are really related directly, but just to do that, the intrinsic value thing I explain with that, he only has the one film strip. And when people try to describe their film strip, sections of their film strip to him, he has real trouble understanding it. So his values are probably intrinsic to his system. And then on the question of why you should, consider this, is because you're experiencing it. You're experiencing something that seems just like when you put a tape measure up to something you're measuring, this table. You're experiencing this measuring, and you experience the comparison, and you go, oh, look, this table is equal to the full length of my 6-foot tape measure. And I would say, well, you're kind of bound to take that seriously at that point. And if we dig in deeper and find out, well, I did it in a dream or something, yeah, then questions could be called into it. There could be illusions, right? And we only find that by you taking it seriously and us looking into it. You experience willpower all the time. It feels like when you have energy, you can get more done with it. And when you have what you call less energy, you can get less done with it. You're experiencing that. That's my prediction. Based on what I know from what people tell me about their film strips and what I know about my film strip, I'm willing to go out on a limb and saying you're facing trivial little choices 24/7, and sometimes big choices. And I think also, you know what I believe is that when you figured out how to control your will in some way, let's say you lose your cool at certain kinds of events and you afterwards you're like, I don't like that. I feel like an idiot. It exposes me to other kinds of derision and negative feedback, but I just feel like when he says this, I gotta say that, da, 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 but I don't want to do that. And so you prepare your mind. You're like, okay, I'm visualizing the next time that happens, and I'm visualizing myself being somewhat calmer and just saying, well, that's very rude, and I don't think I can talk to you anymore. And then you won't have blown your top. You've thought of an alternate thing you can do. And when it happens again, it might not work the first time, but if you keep doing that, you will have reprogrammed yourself. So, my view of the will is like, yeah, in a given instant, you're reacting with programming, but you're the programmer. You have some tools to go ahead and write the program. And just like real programming, it takes time to write those, it takes time to do that, it takes some experimentation as you propose certain reactions that might be better to yourself that are unrealistic for some reason, right? Like you react the way you thought, but then the other person doesn't react, and then you blow up or whatever. So that's experimental and fundamentally the scientific method that you can experiment in your own life with your own will.
Machine in Mendham. That is akin, I related it as akin to the religious person who says he experiences God, therefore God exists.
Right. Exactly. That is why people think God exists. Because they look at their film strip and they look at a beautiful vista or a baby puppy, a baby playing with a puppy. And they see, oh, that's love. God is love. When I see love, I'm seeing God. There's love. I see love in some of these frames. And it becomes a persistent illusion. But I just explained what I think is really going on with that illusion. You can't compare that to having to make choices. You literally have no choice but to experience having to make choices. You could say it doesn't matter, so I won't make them. That it's a choice. So you're experiencing having to make choices, and you actually end up making them by inaction or action or whatever. So you're experiencing that directly. That's my claim.
And I refuse to internalize that as knowledge, as a truth, as
Okay, no, you don't. If you were experiencing God, you kept having a feeling of seeing God in these frames, you would believe in God. Okay, you don't experience that, so you don't have to believe it. I'm telling you something that you do experience. You have to make choices pretty much constantly. You have experiences of bucking up your willpower and doing a little bit better, making the choice you thought was better intellectually, as opposed to your body that just wanted another ho-ho or whatever, or wanted to have sex with that girl, and your brain's going, no, no, she's not right for us, and you act on, we've had these experiences of choices and succeeded more or less, right? And in a way, if you'd say, well, that's not the scientific method because you can't rewind time and run it again, well, all scientific experiments are like that, right? You can't rerun any of them. Maybe it's just a coincidence that it worked that way at that time. Maybe it's a series of coincidences. Yeah, that's not what we're doing. We're reducing the data in here. We're saying, given the frames we have seen, what things fit that?
something necessary for me to go out and investigate, since they can provide me nothing to actually investigate.
Okay, right at this point, you have to tell me, are you denying that you experience making choices? Are you denying that sometimes as you grow older, especially, you learn techniques how to exercise your will more successfully? You figure out, this is how you look for a house. This is how you look for a job. This is how you remember where something is in a movie. This is how you do the things I've decided I want to do. You're experiencing that directly. I know I can't tell you what you're really experiencing, but I'm telling you from what I know, I believe you and everybody else is experiencing that directly all the time. Not like God, where some people feel the presence and some don't. We're talking about your own presence. Do you feel your own presence? And a funny thing here, too, is if you ever notice, people say God hates fags or whatever. They hate fags. God is a synonym for I. They say God is present in everything, every one of these, and what they're really doing is making themselves God.
This machine believes that the physical stuff in the universe interacts with each other in mechanistic ways.
I agree, but it's not exactly what counts as mechanistic. Some of our assumptions about how mechanisms work were wrong. It really is possible to roll dice and there's like 36 combinations that could come up. There's 36, not just one. It's not just one based on what you didn't know. And this is the direction science is going. I mean, I know that your scientific videos are partly about denying that, but that's our position, that there really are multiple possibilities. That is not directly supported by the film strip, right? The film strip, even though there's all these parallel streams and it comes and merges and there's all, you know, you can have the fantasia in your imagery, right? Still, in the final reduction, it goes from frame to frame to frame to frame to frame, right? So it's impossible for us to know if, you know, this frame could have been something different. For real. It felt like it could have been something different. Still, everybody's experiencing this sensation that it could have been something different. That you were lucky. That you made the right decision. That you made the wrong decision, but it turned out well. That you made the right decision, but it turned out badly. And something else could have happened. Now, once it's in the past, most people are like, well, no Mandela effect way to get out of this. It's in the past. That could also be false, by the way.
Or obeys mechanistic rules. This yields time, causality, and fits all known science.
It fits the film strip. This is something we came from the film strip, you know. It's like in one frame, I am holding an object, and in the next frame, I decide to let go of it, and in the frame after that, it falls on my foot and hurts my foot.
Yields repeatability, regularities.
It's a good interpretation. I am also mechanistic. However, random number generation is a part of the mechanism. There is probability within mechanism, and it doesn't defy determinism in the broadest sense. It just means that the future might not already exist. The future is not necessarily something that we're traveling into. It is generated by the moment. And in fact, there is only the moment. So the future is just the part of the moment we don't already have memories for.
And every phenomenon has been shown to emerge from and be applicable to these basic principles, or is as yet not fully understood due to its complexity, or is not really anticipated to be understood because of its complexity.
Well, I do anticipate understanding very complex things.
AKA, i.e., weather systems, perhaps consciousness.
Seriously, this is an important question. Do you think weather systems have the illusion of being conscious? I'm assuming not, but I think this is an important question to discuss. Like, why not?
The lack of foreseeable potential explanation or even model which allows definitive predictive capabilities is clearly not justification to abandon the working premise, the working internalized structure in my brain, which is relatable as a premise and is not in need of restructuring as because of its untruthness. No, it seems that machine Hythloday will leave that structure intact until other machines give good reason for it being a faulty structure, but will not undermine the solidity of that structure is other machines telling me that it's a faulty structure.
Okay, well, I'm not saying it's a faulty structure. I believe in modern physics. I don't believe it's finished. And really, that means anything, any given element in it, is open to debate. However, it's spiraling in on a more and more accurate data reduction result, right? The data reduction, hey, here's how the data is working. There's patterns. How do I know? Well, I've done statistical analysis and mathematical analysis, and I've arrived at that. I also believe in the mechanics because the mechanics can explain all of these. And the ones that are really crazy, me riding a unicorn in my dreams, it explains that too through the physics of biology, specifically my brain. I believe that. I'm not telling you to give that up. I'm saying the fact that that theory does not explain how choice could happen, that doesn't matter. That theory has to explain how choice can happen before you get to eradicate choice, right? Because why? Because you can't eradicate the phenomena of choice. You are not going to eradicate the phenomena of the sun rising. You're going to explain it better. So if you have a theory, it has no explanation for how choice is possible. That doesn't make choice go away until choice actually doesn't appear in here. Since choice is fundamentally embedded in this film strip, you have to explain, just like the sunrise is indelibly injected into the experience of any animal up that early. I should probably use sunset. I've seen a lot more sunsets than sunrises, I can assure you. Right? That phenomena is embedded in our experiences. So you can't just say, well, you know what, I have a system that doesn't explain sunrises. I just know the sun isn't actually rising, something else is happening, so we'll just ignore it. No, since it's embedded a phenomena that keeps happening, that's ubiquitous, that's just built in, choices are in every frame. The eye and the perceptive actor, the interpreter, the camera, as well as the agent, that's embedded in every frame. So just the fact that our physical explanation doesn't explain that yet is not sufficient to say it's not real, we don't take it into account. It's in every frame. You have to take it into account. So the physical system, we're trying to bring it to the point where it can explain it. And we'll find out if choice in the end is, less or more real.
I had a thought about the gap in cosmology, about the rotational speeds of galaxies, and thought somebody could say, you're just making it up, saying there's dark matter. It could be God, or it could be consciousness.
Okay. The thing is with dark matter, the reason it's called dark matter is to be a mysterious name. It's like we don't know what's going on. There's something causing that gravity, and matter causes the gravity, and we can't see it. And originally, originally it had a even more innocent meaning of people thought it was dust and shit that we just couldn't see because it wasn't glowing. The thing is, you can see the dust through its spectral shadow, right? If there's that much dust in the galaxy to affect its rotational curve, right, then it'll be blocking some wavelengths of light. It'll be causing dark bands in the spectra, and it isn't there. So they basically, managed to exclude ordinary baryonic matter or whatever. On the other hand, it could be a law of physics, right? There's still the modified Newtonian dynamics kind of people that are, saying things like, well, at a great distance, sort of there's a resolution problem. And so the power of, since it's not actually continuous, the universe or space, as you get further away from this space warp that is this massive object, the sun or whatever, or the center of the galaxy, that the way the math works, it's more discrete. This is going to cause a difference, just like all the quantum math has caused difference, and you don't have photons of any energy. It has to be whole units of the Planck energy. Something like that's going on. Now, the study of the colliding galaxies, where they use gravitational lensing to map out where the unseen mass was, seemed to show that that mass was clumping a lot like matter, as though it was some exotic particle that acts mostly like matter, but light goes right through and whatnot. I don't know if there's some crack in that interpretation. There was a lot of scientists involved in that, and a lot of computational power, and very convincing arguments. But it still adds up to one result. There could have been a flaw that cascaded down, and it could be that we have the modified Newtonian laws would explain why the rotational curves are so wrong. So when the physicists find out, hey, something is causing these numbers to be different from what we thought, the first thing you do is, okay, that's goobah. That's goobah. What is goobah? Well, it's a thing that makes. Well, that sounds made up, like a red or blue arrow that turns at a right angle. Yeah, it's just a name. It's a label. Now we're going to put research into that discrepancy, into that paradox, into that wrong number. We're going to put research. We're going to call it research into the goobah, which just means research into why the fuck are the rotational curves that on that scale should be easy to predict, like this rotation, like the gravity of an object based on its mass. It should be straightforward to calculate. It's not. So we're going to call whatever is making that discrepancy, we're going to call it dark matter. And then we're going to look into what could be dark matter.
That's holding together the galaxy. That is the extra force. And that's really a bit of a giggle.
No, because if the name was Goobah or God or whatever, it wouldn't change shit. That's the whole point about religion being kind of beside the point. Okay, so God's running everything. Yeah, I still want to know about the inverse square law. Well, it's just a thought God had. Yeah, it's not a reason to not look into how God thinks, right? So it has absolutely no effect on this sort of thing, right? Somebody could say it's God holding it together, and we find out that a God is a weakly interacting massive particle, right? There'll be a physical. God works in the physical universe through physics. He creates a physical system, evidently, and it wouldn't change shit. Okay, thanks for the video. Very much thanks. I enjoy talking to you. You're like almost the only person in the long run, after they took away replies, made it hard to meet new people, candidates. I really value our conversation. Well, I value my conversation, so that's not the only person part. The only person part is, you're growing and you have good ideas, and I disagree with you. Boom. That's the triad of thank you for conversing. However, please stop with any implication that I don't believe in science. I do. I have doubts. You're supposed to have doubts. I have reconstructions. I have things where I disagree. One came up recently about whether the electromagnetic field, which Gary thinks EMF stands for the electromagnetic force, no, the field, that's the medium through which a photon. Yeah, I know the standard, that's not the way they standardly put it, but obviously it's the medium. It's the thing with the gears that, it's got the rubber bands in it, the fields that are the accurate explanation of the propagation of wave, just like a body of water and all the bonding and repulsion and everything that goes on with water molecules explains water waves. It's the medium. The weird part is that it's at rest with every inertial frame. That's weird. And that's the only way, that's how it differs from the ether. So I have my own things where I don't agree with the particular aspects, and I have my own horse I'm betting on. But I believe in the scientific process. I've worked with scientists, and I know they're not, the only delusion would be delusions to themselves. They're not like intentionally hyperagitating water or anything. And I accept it. So as a philosopher, it's clear though that this is what we're really starting with. This is our data set. So you could get a data set, say you got a satellite image. I'm working a lot with satellite images lately in my work, but whatever. You get a satellite image, and what you're really interested in is how many swimming pools are there in this area. So you get the satellite image, and then you look at it. And it's just sets of numbers, but you look at little squares of numbers around, and some of them you can recognize as, swimming pools, right? Swimming pools have some regularity. They might not be rectangular, but tend towards that. And it'll have water, and you'll see the watercolor, and there'll probably be a house nearby. You're reducing the data, right? And that's all that we're doing in general. You get a big bunch of data. It's a picture of the section of the earth, and then you're combing through it for some other subset of data. Right? This is the data set we're starting with. You figured out a law of cause and effect. You think it's a priori? Okay, maybe it's a priori, but I'll know that for that to have happened, cause and effect has to happen in here. Right? If you just had a random brain that was randomly different imagery perceptions all the time, you wouldn't have come up with cause and effect. You wouldn't think it was a priori. You wouldn't even know there was this possible idea of things make sense, basically. So I don't think you should take the approach that I'm saying don't believe in the physical system. What I'm saying is the physical system is something we've constructed by analyzing this data set. And it does not explain all of the phenomena in here yet. And probably the most difficult one to explain is the hard problem of consciousness, which is the first person experience of an individual life form has its own unique film strip. That has not been explained. And if you reduce data and you find all the swimming holes, but you didn't find all the boulders, you don't get to say, well, therefore there's no boulders. No, you explained the swimming holes and ignored the boulders. Boulders are still in the data set. You can't pretend they don't exist. Choice and willpower obviously exist. No two ways about it in this film strip. They have to be explained. You can't just go, well, I've got something that explains so much stuff. I really like it. You and me. It explains celestial mechanics. It explains the spectrum of burning materials. Explains chemical reactions. It is fucking awesome. This is almost like it explains everything, but it doesn't explain the phenomena of choice yet. That doesn't mean you get to throw out the phenomenon of choice. You can't throw out data because the theory you have reduced from the data doesn't explain that data yet. You don't get to go, hey, I've explained a lot of it. Therefore, I'm going to throw away the rest of the data. Don't want to deal with that. No, every fucking frame has choice, willpower, and the concept of I in it. So, all right, thanks again for the video. Reply, cheers.